Hey everybody, today I want to talk about my Buddy heater. It is a fantastic space heater. I absolutely love it. But when I was shopping around for space heaters, I was actually looking for a catalytic heater that was safe indoors. And I kept finding this heater. And while it is safe indoors, it's not actually a catalytic heater. And there's a lot of misinformation out there floating around about this Buddy heater. So today I want to do a little bit of a review of it. I want to talk about how it works, why I like it, and all that good stuff. And then I'm going to sit down and explain how it actually works. I've done some research into this, and it is very clearly not a catalytic heater. And that will become obvious as we start discussing it. So first of all, I need to clarify that I'm not being sponsored in any way. There's no financial consideration for this video in any way, shape, or form. I am, however, an Amazon associate. So if you make any purchases using the links I provide below, I do get a small percentage of that purchase, but that's got nothing to do with the manufacturer or sponsorship or anything else. I'm talking about this heater because I really like this heater. So it's basically a simple propane heater. This little pops out. You unscrew your tank and take it off. You can also get one of the adapters that you can put a hose to it and then run it to one of the big 25-pound or 20-pound tanks. That works just as well. To start it, and actually let's turn some lights out here so we can see what we're doing. To start it, you're going to turn your knob to where it says pilot, and then you're going to push down and hold it for just a few seconds. There's a heat coupler in there to make sure it's lit, and I'm hoping you can see that pilot light lit in there. It's also got an anti-tip protection, so it just shut itself off because I leaned it too far forward. So we'll light the pilot light again. Once the pilot light's lit, you turn it all the way around to full, and then you will start to see that front plate turn orange. Let's turn it a little bit at an angle here so we can maybe see it in the darkness a little better. So once that front plate starts turning orange, if you want to remove it back to low, you can just push down and turn back to the low position, and you will get slightly less heat and orange color coming off of there. But even on the low position, this thing puts out a huge amount of heat. I can't believe how much heat comes out of this thing. I actually take this outside with me in the winter if I'm going to be standing around in one spot, and I just set it on the ground next to me, and it feels like I'm standing next to a small campfire. It keeps me warm outside. Now, you can't really use it in real high wind because there is open flame, as we're going to discuss in a minute, and the flame can flicker in high wind. See, I just blew it out just by doing that. So not really good for using in windy locations or outdoors, but it is safe to use indoors. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and sit down and talk about that for a minute. But that's the basic function of it. It's the basic review. It does have a tip-over protection. It's got other protections in there too. It's got a protection for low oxygen, but we're going to talk about that when we talk about how it actually functions. So that's it. That's the basic functions of it. You got a pilot light. You push this down, get the pilot light lit. Turn it to high till it flares up. You can start it by turning it to low. It just takes a few more moments for the tile to start glowing orange and for it to really come up to full functionality. It depends on that tile glowing orange to provide you with the infrared radiant heat, which is what this is. It's a radiant heater, not a catalytic heater. All right, now as I said, when I was shopping around for an indoor safe space heater, I was specifically looking for a catalytic heater, and I quickly found out that those are really expensive. So I knew just by the price point that this Buddy heater was not going to be a catalytic heater. I watched a lot of YouTube videos that gave demonstrations of them and showed them how they were safe indoors, and a lot of people tested them. And a lot of misinformation was given out in those videos. The general conclusion was that they are indeed safe indoors, and they are. We're going to go over that. But a lot of confusion was out there. A lot of people seem to think there's some kind of hybrid, you know, a combustion and catalytic sort of hybrid, or a lot of people thought they were catalytic. And a lot of the confusion stemmed from these little units right here. This is a CO, or a carbon monoxide tester. If I say CO2 in the future in this video, I'm talking about CO, carbon monoxide. I keep catching myself saying CO2 because I keep fish and I talk about carbon dioxide a lot. But in this video, we're talking about carbon monoxide, which is CO. So please remember that if I say CO2, we're talking about CO. So these little meters will tell you if you've got excessive carbon monoxide in the air. And I've seen a lot of tests done where people will set up one of these buddy heaters in their camper or their tent, and they will use one of these little monitors to see how much carbon monoxide puts out, and that little reading says 0 the whole time, and so therefore they say, look, it's not producing any carbon monoxide. These are not carbon monoxide monitors. These are carbon monoxide alarms. They don't tell you a running count of how much carbon monoxide is in the air. Otherwise, it wouldn't always say 0. You ever think about that? It always says 0. These always say 0 until you cross a certain threshold, usually 30 parts per million. Once you've crossed that 30 parts per million threshold, this will say 30 parts per million, and it'll start beeping and chirping and letting you know you're getting into dangerous levels of carbon monoxide and you need to ventilate or remove yourself to fresh air or find the source or whatever. But these say 0 up until there's a problem. These are alarms. They're not monitors. They don't give you a running count of what's going on. So for everybody that's done one of those tests and they said, look, it shows 0, it's not producing any carbon monoxide. That's not how these things work, and it's not how this space heater works. There's obviously carbon monoxide in the air. There's carbon monoxide in the air right now. It's just at low enough levels that it's not dangerous. So the way these buddy heaters actually work is through combustion, but it is a combustion of a very small amount of propane, and it's in front of a specially designed ceramic tile. I have no idea what kind of technology goes into it, but it really efficiently absorbs that heat from the fire and then re-emits it in infrared radiation, which is why it glows orange like that, and it puts out a ton of heat for a very small amount of flame. And if you look at the packaging, if you look at the instructions, if you go to their website, it says the same thing everywhere, and that is that the buddy heater is safe indoors with proper ventilation. That's the caveat that everybody always leaves out. It's safe indoors with proper ventilation. But a campfire is safe indoors with proper ventilation. That's what a fireplace is. It's a campfire that you have in your living room with proper ventilation. So don't think that you can seal yourself up in a box with a buddy heater and not asphyxiate. It does produce carbon monoxide. It just doesn't produce a lot of it. If you think about somebody that takes a bubble bath and has 30 candles around the bathtub, that's a lot of fire, and no one really puts in any kind of special ventilation to do that. I know tons of people, myself included, that use hurricane lamps for little sources of heat. I got a hurricane lamp in my office, and that thing puts out a flame that's, you know, an inch wide and inch tall. That's a lot of fire, and I don't do any special ventilation for running a hurricane lamp or two. And this is no different. It's just a small amount of fire. There is combustion. It is producing CO2, but it's just not producing a lot of it. And as long as you've got adequate ventilation, which is normal household conditions, and I'm assuming if you're in a camper or a trailer or especially a tent that's got semi-permeable fabric, then enough oxygen can get in and enough CO, you know, carbon monoxide can get out, and that is your adequate ventilation. Now, the one thing that confused me was the safety device on this is not a carbon monoxide monitor. It doesn't monitor high levels of carbon monoxide, because that's where you run into danger. You can have plenty of oxygen in the air, but if there's also carbon monoxide in the air, you can still run into danger. So with this having a low oxygen sensor as its safety cutoff, that kind of seemed odd to me. I didn't get it at first, but when I thought about it, it makes perfect sense. If it's not getting enough oxygen, that means there's not adequate ventilation, and it shuts itself off. It's as simple as that. It doesn't need to monitor how much carbon monoxide is building up in the room. All it needs to monitor is the oxygen. As long as it's above a certain point, then it knows that fresh oxygen is coming in to replenish what's being burned off, And if that's happening, then you've got adequate ventilation. If the oxygen's coming in, then the carbon monoxide's going out. And that is your safety feature. As long as you've got adequate ventilation, this will keep up and running. It's got the anti-tip over device, as we saw. That works every time. You lean it over a little bit, it just goes off like a switch. You only got to get about, 50 degrees, 45 degrees, and it goes off. And so no problems there. Again, really, really awesome little space heater, but it is not a catalytic heater, and it is not some kind of hybrid or whatever. It's just a really, really efficient heater. I can run the thing for hours on one of these little tanks, and I generally, if I'm indoors, I generally run it on low because it really does put out so much heat that it warms my whole basement work area within 15-20 minutes. I'm usually turning it off, and when the basement cools back down a little bit, I'll turn it back on, run it for half an hour, but it puts out a ton of heat. So great value for your money. It's a heater I really, really recommend. I love it myself, but again, not catalytic. Safe indoors, but not catalytic. Remember, proper ventilation is the key to it being safe indoors. So thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful. Hope that cleared up any sort of misunderstandings about how this functions. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you real soon in the next one.